Something changed at the Social Security Administration on March 11th, and if you're collecting Social Security, SSI, or SSDI right now, this directly affects your money. Here's what nobody is telling you clearly. The SSA just rolled out new identity verification rules that could block your access to benefits if you don't know what's coming. On top of that, over 3.2 million seniors are still waiting on benefit increases, some as high as $1,190 a month, owed to them under the Social Security Fairness Act, which wiped out 2 decades of unfair reductions. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has quietly reinstated 100% overpayment recovery, meaning if SSA made a mistake, they can now take your entire check to get it back. And SSDI cuts are being discussed that could affect nearly 80% of disabled workers who are over 50. These changes are real, they're already moving, and most people sitting at home have no idea what's happening to their benefits right now. Stay with me. I'm going to break every single one of these changes down, plain and simple, so you know exactly where you stand. So let's start with the very first thing that actually kicked all of this off, because March 11 is not some random date that someone picked out of a calendar. What happened around that time is that the Social Security Administration officially began rolling out and enforcing new identity verification rules that changed how millions of Americans interact with the agency. And the reason this matters to you, sitting at home right now, is because how you prove who you are to Social Security determines whether your benefits keep flowing or get delayed. That is not an exaggeration. That is what is actually happening. Here is the background you need to understand. For years, if you needed to apply for Social Security benefits, or if you wanted to change the bank account where your check goes, you could simply call the SSA's 800 number, answer a few personal questions, and they would verify who you were right over the phone. They called it knowledge-based authentication, meaning they would ask you things like your mother's maiden name, your previous address, things that in theory only you would know. But the SSA's own acting commissioner stated that knowledge-based authentication is essentially dead now because personal identifying information has become so widely available to scammers and bad actors through large-scale corporate data breaches that answering those questions over the phone no longer proves anything. That is the agency's own reasoning for scrapping phone verification. And on the surface, that actually makes sense. Nobody wants their identity stolen and their benefits rerouted to a scammer's bank account. That is a real problem that does happen. But here is where things got messy fast. Starting around March 31st, people applying for Social Security or changing their banking information over the phone were being directed to use a My Social Security online account at ssa.gov to verify their identity. If they could not do that, they were told they needed to go to a local Social Security office in person. And the moment that news got out, the phone started ringing off the hook with concerned seniors, advocacy groups, and members of Congress asking one very simple question. What about the people who cannot get online? And what about the people who physically cannot get to an office? Because that is not a small group of people. Surveys consistently show that millions of seniors lack reliable internet access, either because broadband simply does not reach where they live or because they do not own a computer or a smartphone. And beyond that, about 6 million seniors would have faced a 45-mile trip just to reach an SSA field office. Think about that for a second. Imagine you are 78 years old, you do not drive anymore, and the nearest Social Security office is 45 miles away. That is not a minor inconvenience. That is a wall between you and your money. The backlash was significant enough that the SSA actually walked parts of this back. Officials announced they were exempting people who apply for Medicare, disability benefits, and supplemental income from having to prove their identity in person if they were unable to use the online system. So if you were applying for SSDI or SSI, you got some breathing room. But if you are applying for retirement benefits or survivor benefits, or if you need to change your direct deposit information, the rules are stricter. You would need to either verify online or show up at an office. And they pushed the enforcement date to April 14th to give people more time to prepare. Then, after even more pressure from advocacy groups and lawmakers, the SSA announced it would allow seniors and other recipients to verify their identity over the phone rather than requiring them to make in-person visits. thanks to the rollout of new anti-fraud software that can identify anomalies when people verify over the phone, so the agency reversed itself again. But here is the reality. None of this has been clean, none of it has been communicated clearly, and millions of people are still confused about exactly what they need to do and when. So, if you are a current beneficiary and you are not trying to change your bank account or apply for anything new right now, you generally do not need to do anything immediately. But if you are in the process of filing, or if your banking information has changed, you want to make sure you have your My Social Security account set up at SSA.gov before you need it, not after. Because the last thing you want is to be scrambling in a crisis when your check does not show up. Go to SSA.gov, create that account, and make sure the address and direct deposit information on file is current and accurate. That one step right there can prevent a lot of headaches down the road. Now, let's talk about the money side of all of this, because there are people watching this video right now who are owed money and do not even know it yet. This is about the Social Security Fairness Act, which was signed into law in January of 2025, and it is genuinely one of the biggest positive changes to Social Security in decades. Here is what it did. For years, there were two rules called the Windfall Elimination Provision and the Government Pension Offset that quietly reduced or completely wiped out Social Security benefits for certain people. We are talking about teachers in many states, firefighters, police officers, federal employees under the Civil Service Retirement System, and others who had pensions from jobs that did not pay into Social Security. The Social Security Fairness Act ended both of those provisions, and the SSA identified about 2.8 million current beneficiaries whose benefits had been reduced because of them. What happened next is that the SSA began sending out retroactive payments going all the way back to January 2024, which is the first month those reductions no longer applied. Through the early weeks of implementation, the average retroactive payment was around $6,710, and the agency had already paid more than $7.5 billion to over 1 million people. And they kept moving fast. By July 7, 2025, the SSA completed sending over 3.1 million payments totaling $17 billion to eligible beneficiaries, finishing 5 months ahead of schedule. That is the government actually delivering ahead of time, which does not happen often, so that is worth noting. Monthly benefit increases under the Act vary widely, with some people receiving very little while others may be eligible for over $1,000 more per month, depending on the size of their pension and the type of benefit they receive. Now, if you are a retired teacher, firefighter, police officer, or federal worker, and you have not checked on this yet, please do not wait. If your benefits were being reduced under WEP or GPO before January 2024, your records should have already been updated and your back payments should have been sent. But if you filed a new claim after the law passed, or if you never filed at all because you were told you would not qualify, you may still be in the queue. As of mid-2025, the SSA had received over 278,000 new applications from people with pensions from non-covered work and had processed 92% of them. If you have not filed and think you might be eligible, go to ssa.gov to apply right now, because the date you apply can affect when your benefits actually start. Do not leave money on the table that you genuinely earned. Now, here is the part of this story that nobody is talking about in a straightforward way, and it is the part that honestly makes a lot of seniors nervous: the overpayment issue. This one is real, and you need to understand it clearly so it does not blindside you. An overpayment happens when the SSA pays you more than you were technically supposed to receive. And the reasons this happens are not always your fault. Overpayments can occur due to changes in a beneficiary's income, marital status, or living arrangements that are not promptly reported or processed by the agency itself. In some cases, the SSA does not catch these errors for years, and then suddenly sends you a letter saying you owe thousands of dollars back. Under the Biden administration in early 2024, the SSA had lowered the maximum amount they could withhold from your check to recover an overpayment down to just 10% per month. So if you were overpaid and owed money back, they would only take a small slice of your check each month, giving you time to adjust. But as of March 27, 2025, the SSA reinstated the 100% withholding rate, meaning people who receive new overpayments after that date will have their entire monthly benefit check withheld until the debt is fully paid off. The SSA frames this as responsible stewardship of taxpayer money, and that argument has merit on paper. But the real-world impact for a senior who depends entirely on that monthly check is severe. More than 7 million Americans 65 and older receive at least 90% of their income from Social Security, and the impact of missing even 1 or 2 monthly payments can be catastrophic. Here is what you need to know to protect yourself. First, if you had an overpayment that was already being repaid under the old 10% terms before March 27, 2025, nothing changes for you. Your arrangement stays the same. The new 100% rate only applies to new overpayments assessed after March 27, 2025, and the SSI withholding rate stays at 10% regardless. Second, if you receive a notice from the SSA saying you have been overpaid and you cannot afford to have your entire check withheld, you have rights. You can call 1-800-772-1213 or go to your local SSA office and request a lower recovery rate. You can also appeal the overpayment decision entirely if you believe the SSA made a mistake. And critically, you can request a waiver using SSA Form 632, which asks the agency to forgive all or part of the overpayment if it was not your fault, and repaying it would cause financial hardship. You have 60 days from the date of the notice to act, so do not sit on that letter. The moment it arrives, open it, read it, and call or visit the SSA. The other piece of this that is creating real anxiety among seniors is what is happening to the SSA itself as an organization. The cuts are real. DOGE published a list of at least 26 Social Security field offices expected to close, and the agency was projected to lay off at least 7,000 workers as part of the federal downsizing effort. When you cut staff at an agency that is responsible for paying millions of people every single month and processing complex disability and retirement claims, the downstream effect is longer wait times, more errors, and more confusion. And we have already seen evidence of this. Disabled and low-income seniors were mistakenly told by the agency's website that their benefits had ended, when in reality nothing had changed. That is a system under strain. It is not functioning the way it should, and that matters enormously to people whose lives revolve around receiving that check on time. This is why being proactive right now is so important. Do not assume everything is fine just because your check arrived last month. Log into your My Social Security account or create one if you have not already. Make sure your direct deposit information is accurate. Make sure your address is current. If you recently got married, divorced, or if your income changed in any way, report that to the SSA as soon as possible, because unreported changes are one of the most common reasons overpayments happen in the first place. And if you have a family member or a close friend who is collecting benefits and is not internet savvy or not aware of these changes, please share this with them, because the people most at risk right now are the ones who are not paying attention and are not expecting anything to change. There is also a scam warning tied directly to all of this chaos, and it cannot be overstated. Scammers are actively taking advantage of the confusion created by these SSA changes, sending emails from fake accounts pretending to be the Social Security Administration, asking people to verify their identity to continue receiving benefits. The real SSA will not email you asking you to verify your identity out of the blue. If you get an email like that, do not click any links and do not provide any personal information. Go directly to ssa.gov yourself by typing the address into your browser, or call 1-800-772-1213 directly. The SSA will tell you if there is actually something you need to address, and they will never pressure you through an unsolicited email. The broader picture here is that 2025 brought some of the most significant changes to Social Security in a long time, some of them genuinely good for beneficiaries, like the Social Security Fairness Act putting real money back into the pockets of public servants who were robbed of it for decades, and some of them deeply concerning, like the overpayment clawback rule and the identity verification confusion that left millions of vulnerable people scrambling. What this moment calls for is not panic, but it absolutely calls for awareness and action. The system is changing, the agency is under pressure, and the rules are shifting in ways that directly affect your monthly income. The best thing you can do for yourself and your family right now is stay informed, keep your SSA account updated, know your rights around overpayments, check your eligibility under the Social Security Fairness Act, and never, ever stop watching what is happening with your benefits. Because nobody is going to look out for your money more than you will.